The first person I'd like to thank, who I said on Facebook, please don't poke him with sharp sticks or anything. He spent quite a while with 3 hours sleep a night designing the box set, is my label partner Paul G. Smith. So let's have a warm round of applause for Paul. Now, the way this whole thing started was actually an organisation called Sound of Music, who decided they wanted to do something with improvised music. Asked Evan Parker, obviously, as a chap who knows something about improvised music, I would say. And he said, have a word with John Russell. And the person at Sound of Music at that time was this gentleman here, Guy Morley. So thank you, Guy, for kicking the whole thing off. Guy.
Are we going to make it as we go along, John?
Yes, I think so, yes. So we're going to talk a little bit about it.
And so, as John quite rightly said, I was working for an organisation called Sound of Music, and actually I'd like to say thanks to Richard and Susanna, who are both here tonight as well.
Indeed, yeah.
And Sound of Music, for those of you that don't know, is a contemporary music organisation that was merging between 4 organisations, from contemporary classical to sound art, contemporary music network as well. And we wanted to try and work out how to engage with a very wide variety of constituencies, and improvised music was one of those. And we were very aware, John, and this is the thing that's going to be my first question really, is that there are very active scenes and lots of activists and musicians around the country, and we wanted to try and find some way of engaging with all of that, and hence the discussion about Malcolm Russo. So I wanted to ask you a little bit about how you got into the scene and how then. Oh yeah, sure.
Oh, okay.
You can't hear us at the back.
Well, the feedback.
You could move a bit closer.
No, you see, that's about. So, well, not used to this sort of business. Yeah, I started playing the guitar through reading about. Well, I started playing the guitar at school because there were kids who were older and, you know, had guitars and looked like they knew what was going on, and I wanted to join in something, you know, as an 11-year-old. That was 50 years ago. And then I read about improvised music in Melody Maker, and Richard Williams was writing in Melody Maker at the time. Richard's writing on improvised music was always positive and revelatory or illuminating. His writing's always like that, whether it's Motown or you know, and it was great. And at the time, you could go into local record shops and you could order what you'd read about. So that kind of curiosity could be fulfilled. Unfortunately, what happened then was major chains took over, only bought from certain distributors, etc. And that's always the problem we have. So anyway, I came to London. I heard the music live after having been intrigued by the music as it was recorded. When I heard it live, I found it engaging, because one of the things about this music is that the audience and the musicians discover it at the same time, and that's a very special kind of bond I think we have when we're working.
So who were the sort of people that you were seeing?
I was mostly hanging around the Little Theatre Club, and John Stevens was a force, you know, who put a rocket up everybody's backside to do it, you know. It was great. And then over time, you meet people who are, and the only way to do this music was to kind of organise it yourself, you know. So the first gig I organised was in a hole in the ground in Kentish Town, which was where they put the beer barrels into a pub that was squatted, and the gig was in the cellar of this squatted pub. And I think Evan was on it, Peter Cusack, John English, Steve Beresford. There was about 12 musicians and no audience in this hole in the ground. And that was in 1973, I think. And it seemed like important just to keep organising stuff. And then you find out that other people around the country are doing this thing. Charlie Collins is here with beer, and Fernandez, and the Sheffield scene has been going for a long time, self-organising and things like that. So when we looked at the tour, I thought, well, let's go to the places where the musicians are organising things and see if we can take this thing there and up it for them. And I'm very pleased to say that we broke all the box office records and played some fantastic concerts with the great musicians that you're hearing tonight, and also the local musicians played the set as well.
So which cities did you go to?
Oh, crikey, it's on the list. Bristol, Manchester, Newcastle, Sheffield, Oxford, Brighton, of course, can't leave out Brighton. And there was one other one, sorry. So, seven in all. Some of the places didn't kind of understand what we were doing or whatever, or said you have to fill out this form to do that, and you know, so we didn't go there. So we limited it to 7.
Good. And what do you think? So that's a little bit about how you got into it. What do you think? You mentioned as well that there was in that first gig there were 12 people playing and nobody in the audience.
Yes.
but one thing that strikes me about the scene is how many people who are musicians are also avid audience goers, and there's more overlap. And actually, there's a sort of creativeness about being an improvising musician on stage, which is about how you play, how you relate. And there's a relationship with the audience and how the audience listen and hear the music. And there's a process going on, perhaps.
I think that's true. I mean, I think we talk about the open ear, you know. We're living in a world which is monetised and everything's a commodity, and people like to see the label on the can and know what's inside the can, and they need to know the monetary value of everything, which doesn't sort of work with what we do, you know. And I think it's to listen to this music and enjoy this music, it's best to kind of have an open ear. Now, when I had a solo record out some time ago, I sent a copy to my aunt, who's sadly since passed away, who sat with her grandson and listened to it and wrote down on pieces of paper what they thought. So it was like the sound through the hedgerows, or it reminded them of birds or things like this. Now, these are people from the countryside who haven't come across this allegedly sophisticated improvised music, but it was a very honest response, and it touched me that people do that, you know, and it's having this open ear. That's what we try and do as musicians. We don't say, music, you're going to do this, we're going to bash you about till you fit in this box or this cubby hole or whatever. We ask the music, what do you want? You know, let's go with the music, let's improvise, let's have this open approach. And that's what we share with the audience, I think, you know.
I think as somebody who probably sits in these gigs more than would ever play them, actually one of the things I really enjoy is watching and hearing and seeing the interaction between musicians, and something that is very immediate.
Yes, yeah.
Do you think it's time for some music?
I think it probably is, because I mentioned my aunt, but if you'd have met my grandmother, that's who I learned to talk from. So I've got to clear off now because I'll talk for hours. So, thank you very much, Guy Morley.